Hello, everybody. Give me a chance to find the window. Okay. Hi. I hope everybody's doing fine. I see a few people in the stream. Hopefully, everybody can hear me well. Okay, let me set up everything. Hi. So this will be a weekly event that we can have every week, and we can look at what the indicators tell us. These indicators are available for everybody to use directly um, online. So you can actually look at them and study them on a regular basis. But at the same time, we can do it together on a weekly basis, so we can actually understand what is going on, how the market looks like, and so on. I will now go through the details of the um, of the market on a hey Michael Tenney. I will now go into the details of it, how the indicators work, because I did already different videos about that. If you have specific questions, we can go. I will give you a general introduction of how they work. They're all based on some kind of variation of the power law and understanding the power law. The reason why we have more than one is because we want to have convergence. We want to look at Bitcoin in many different ways, and when we arrive to certain conclusion, we want to make sure that we have more than one indicator pointing to some particular event, right? Are we close to the top? Are we close to the bottom? Are we going close to a bull market? All these kind of things. So let's dive in. So it looks like the market recently is going up, right? And everybody's very excited about that. In our understanding of the cycles, and people do it in different ways, and I don't have a problem with that. The only time, the only problem I have, and I will always have until that model is gone once and forever, is S to F. Mostly because I really think, and I demonstrated many times, that S to F is not like doesn't give us real information. It's based on a fake correlation. So it's actually worse, right? If you have false information, it's worse than having partial information. But there are many people with different approaches, different ideas, their own style. So I even follow some of them because they maybe do like TA that is not. I think it's not ideal. But sometimes we have good insights, or they show some interesting patterns. So it's okay. But in our understanding, so just to give you a way to kind of interpret what we do, we basically we have a power law as the general trend, right? That is our guiding light. We really believe, it's not believe, it's the math that shows this, that there is this overall general trend, and the power law doesn't tell anything about bubbles. So, it doesn't have, if anything, what the power law says, what bubbles? There are no bubbles, because they tend to cancel each other, right? You see how during the bubbles we leave a general support line. We really think that actually the real power law is the support line. We leave a support line, and then we reach these tops, and then the price goes back to the support line. This support line is this white line here. It's about 60% from the trend. So we always start from the trend, because initially when it was discovered, that was the idea. Oh, looks, seems that Bitcoin follows this straight line in the log graph. let's draw a line through it. Of course, we don't do it by hand; it's all done mathematically. But when you draw stuff like that, you come up with some patterns, some regularity. The question is always, what does it mean? What is the interpretation? And you can interpret the middle line as some kind of middle ground between the bubble and maybe the real power law that probably is this support line. And we think that the support line has to do with mining, with the production cost of Bitcoin. So this is why it has never been violated so far, because it's kind of a point of reference for the entire system. So in our understanding of the cycles, because of how the cycles come in the picture, because of the general idea is the bubble cancel, and so it's almost like they didn't exist at all. That is the first level understanding through the power law. It's like they don't matter. There are other ways to show that, like for example, if we do a longer and longer moving average of a price, and this is what you see here, this coded curve, you will see that this price starts to go closer and closer to the support line. Basically, it's going to reproduce the support line, not the middle ground, not the lean on line, but actually the support line. And it will look more and more like a straight line. We did it many times, offline, etc. So that is another way of showing, well, if you average what happened during the cycle, the bubble will disappear. But they are there, right? And we want to know them because I think the only reason why we want to know is that you're going to do something. Because if you only do hodling, why do we even care that we have a bull market? Actually, you should be pissed off that we have a bull market, because during this time, the price goes crazy and it reaches a certain height. And then you see you losing 80% of whatever the value was there. So I don't know. I mean, maybe some people like the adrenaline of that, but it's also a little bit depressing, right? Many people leave actually Bitcoin if they don't understand what is going on, and that we have these cycles, etc., because of this. And many people, you say, oh, there are many people who come in. Maybe this is what attracts newcomers. But actually, there is some evidence that is the case. So you could be excited about that. But some of the people will also leave because they buy at the top. They get disappointing when the market crash because they don't understand. And so, sure, maybe you still get excited even if you just do hodling. But I think even as a hodler, you can still use this knowledge. Like, for example, I imagine that you continue to buy Bitcoin, maybe on a DCA plan, and you can use it to weight your DCA. I will show you one approach, for example, where you buy less and less Bitcoin as we come closer to the top, and then you put aside the USDT, and when we go down, you start to rebuy back, and you can do it gradually. You can wait for the bottom. But even in that case, where you don't plan to do anything special at the top, you can use this knowledge to actually optimize, having Bitcoin. Because, just holding Bitcoin, it's great. But it looks also to me like you're not an active participant, and you are now managing your holding Bitcoin. So if you do something that is focused in understanding Bitcoin, because this is all what we're trying to do. We are trying to understand how Bitcoin works, how the cycles go, and when they start, when they end, how they develop. That is great. If you love Bitcoin, I think it's an amazing way of doing this thing of dealing your holding in Bitcoin, even if you don't do much with it. But then, the general idea that we want to do something, right? I imagine the majority of people that follow me on X, or the people that watch these videos, are interested in doing that. So there are different options. But I was trying to tell you a little bit more about our understanding of cycles. Our understanding of cycle goes like this, where basically it's arbitrary. You could do it in a different way. Many people like the halving. And by the way, let me show you where the halving are in the chart. So many people think the halving is this critical event it's not that we don't think that, right? We have a video where we are trying to explain where the bubble come from. We don't think they come from supply shocks. It doesn't have anything to do with supply at all. It's most like, it's an event that people are waiting for. The miners are updating. They're buying new machines. So it's a kind of like a renewal time for Bitcoin. It's a kind of a holiday. A lot of things are happening, and new companies are created. There is like a burst in interest in Bitcoin, in adoption, etc. But the decrease in supply doesn't have an impact directly. And we discussed that many times. It changes really your understanding of Bitcoin, because if you're all based on this idea of scarcity, etc., I think if it was true, it was true. We will have to understand it and we will have to accept it. But if it is not true and the data shows it's not true, then it's a distorted view of what Bitcoin is and how it works. But in our understanding, in our way of dealing with the cycles, we have these times. This year we created some kind of a clock here, where 12 is the top. Now, there is a little confusion about this. Is we try to align the human time with Bitcoin time. So it's really so imagine that there are these 4 cycles, right? And we arbitrarily we say, well, the top is close enough to the end of the year, in that particular year where the top happens, where I'm going to choose the starting of a cycle at January 1st or December 31st of that year. So, for example, for the last cycle, it was in 21, when we went from 20 to 21. So that is our starting. Now, the top of the bubbles seem to happen a little bit before. So if you are dividing these 4 years, where every 3 hours represent 1 year, the top are about 11, time 11. So they happen a little bit. So here, when you see top, please understand, I mean the end of a cycle. So it's not the best name. I could have said end of a cycle, but it's they say, let's call it calendar top, right? And then the physical top happen a little bit earlier. This is why, for example, we have 46 instead of having 64. But all the other tools we have, they did get the right top, where exactly the top was. But here we have slightly off, because basically it's trying to tell us, maybe I should put another marker saying here, and we can come up with another name for this, end of a cycle or whatever. But the real physical top, it's a little bit away, like more like 11, and then the bottom, that is about 1 year later, very precisely. That is why we like this calendar way of describing the cycles, because they seem to happen in a very regular fashion according to human time. So it's about 1 year. Now, again, with the use of all the other indicators, we can pinpoint it better. But let's say in the general area of around 3 is where we see the bottoms. And then you can mark 6. 6 is here. Many people confuse because they see a bump here. They think that it's a peak. No, it's not peak. It's simply, how the clock is represented is supposed to be like a sine wave. We made a positive sine wave, just taking, kind of flipping the negative part. So it looks like a bunch of bumps, basically, that became bigger and bigger. So it's kind of mark like an important event. We left the bear market. We reached the bottom. The bear market, the bottom was 1 year before. Usually this time between 6 and 9 as the halving. And one of the reasons why we don't use the halving. So today I was discussing with another analyst, and it's not one of these things that is worth to have a fight about, because differently from my resistance to not resistant, but being really mad at SWF because it's fake. With others, these things are arbitrary. It's a question of choice and taste. I think there is some reasoning not to use the halving, mostly because they are based on block time. And one will think, oh, block time is more relevant for Bitcoin because after all, it's a machine, it's a program, and so it has its own internal time. There is an argument for that. Maybe if you're doing like hash rate discussions or maybe other things like that. But in terms of how humans interact with the price, we don't care about block time. Maybe we can go and read that this is block time, but we don't function in that way. We think about June, July, December is coming, Christmas is coming. So I think from a social point of view, time, like human time and human seasons and human months and quarters, like we do divide things in quarter, we have certain significance even in terms of financial things that are happening. So this is why I rather focus on that, because the halving are happening all over the place. Here this one happened in May, this one happened in April. It's close enough, but variable because of a block time that is, the blocks are not perfectly always 10 minutes, they vary, and so there is some fuzziness there. So you can still market and still measure things from halving, but I prefer this way of describing the cycle using this timing. Okay, maybe no other people do it, but this is our approach, and you can try to reconcile it with what other people do. But in our understanding, 12 is the top, 3 is the bottom, 6 is this transition. It happens usually a little bit before the halving. You see here is when it happened here, the halving. So kind of close to the halving. And then as we move along, right, the beauty of writing equations and having everything predictive is that we can actually make predictions. So we can predict when this 9 time is going to be, when usually the bull market start, right? It's again very arbitrary because the market, where did it start? Did it really started here? Did it start a little bit before? Maybe, so not, maybe it didn't start at 9, maybe started at 8:30, but around, again, think about if these were like areas or regions, so around these regions where the bull market starts. And last time, again, if you wanted to make it perfect, it's always kind of December, right? December is the top, this end of December. December is the top, end of December is the top, the bottom is December. So it simplifies these. And then you can think about, say, well, then maybe the real bottom was here. It was maybe 250, right? Maybe the bull market started here. It was maybe like 8:30, not exactly 9. So around that time, right? Add or subtract 30 minutes, and 30 minutes, every minute is 2 days in Bitcoin time. So we are talking about add or subtract 1 or 2 months. And with this, I know it sounds fuzzy, but it's still amazing that we can make predictions ahead of time within 1 or 2 months, right? So this is why here, the beginning of a bull market, I'm thinking that, based on past experience, it should start in November, December. And it's basically where the cusp of this indicator is, right? This is the equivalent of this. And this is where I'm waiting for the bull market to start. Because historically, this is what Bitcoin has done. So, I say that part of what we are trying to answer is the bull run starting? It's going there, right? Everything, all the different signs are converging to tell us that the bull market will start soon. I'm looking very carefully at this price right today, where it went all the way to almost 66,000. That seems very exciting. In a moment, we are going to look at liquidity. It's less exciting from a liquidity point of view because I will give you my argument. It seems that in general, you do have to have a liquidity for the bull market to be sustained, because last thing we want to do is the price is pushing up, like, it kind of like it did here, and then it's not supported by the liquidity and it's going to crash, right? It's more demoralizing. So I don't mind actually this oscillations because I'm actually having some algorithm running where I'm DCAing down when these oscillations happen, and then I sell. I don't sell my original Bitcoin. I borrow because I'm using a little bit of leverage, nothing crazy, but like maybe two. Then I sell, buy. I made a few $1,000s. That some people even you never know. It's always wrong and posting something online. There'll be always somebody saying something silly. Somebody say, "Oh, that means that you are not an OG, because otherwise it will show us millions of dollars in transaction." Do you think if I was doing that, I will show you millions of dollars in transactions? I will not, right? I'm showing you how well the algorithm is performing by showing a small transaction, a few $1,000s. I'm not going to show you millions of dollars in transactions. Nobody will do that. And in fact, if I did them, I would want to, you will think, if you follow their reasoning, I will want to show you, look, making millions of dollars. It's not about bragging. I'm not bragging. Or I want to show you that there are ways of, if you are careful, because please, always be careful. Never do degen things. Do not trust stupid people. Say, I have this bot that does this other, including me. Double, triple check. Try to understand what you're doing. If you write your own code, there's nothing wrong with that. You're experimenting. In particular, if you're not doing anything degen, like selling, doing it with 100 times leverage, etc., you will get burned. But if you do it with a small amount, something that it's you're okay with it, and then you can make some money, so you can buy more Bitcoin, because that is the goal. I'm not trying to go and spending in stupid things. I want to buy more Bitcoin with this. And if you want to dismiss $5,000 in a month while you're trading with 12,000, it's up to you. So I'm okay with these oscillations right now. I do want the bull market. I want to go there, but I will be okay with a bunch of oscillations up to here. And by the way, we have an indicator that tell us if we are in a regime where to expect oscillations, or if we are on a path, to the peak. Because when the bull market start, you can see this indicator always shows. Okay, let me show it in a way where you can see it better. Let me make it bigger. So this is called an Earth indicator. So we actually developed this indicator based on a paper that is called Chaos and Order in Bitcoin's Market, because people actually write scientific paper on Bitcoin. And these people were very surprised by how orderly Bitcoin looks like. There is also chaotic behavior, there is noise, there is random behavior, of course, right? If you look at things of a minute level, of a hour level, it looks like completely unpredictable. I think there are patterns there too, but they are more difficult to understand. But when you look at things from, you take a drone and you fly, you start to see these incredible regularities in Bitcoin. That is the entire thesis that we are following here. And so they developed this tool. They almost discovered the power law in time. They did discover that you see all these power laws in the organization of the, how, if you look at the fluctuations of Bitcoin, like how much it deviates from the general trend, and you can see a pattern there. And the pattern, it's a power law, even in these deviations. And then using this power law, you can calculate the slope of these fluctuations, and it gives you this quantity that is basically kind of a fractal measure of the price of Bitcoin. And if you do it, you can do it, overall, the entire Bitcoin history. And by the way, do you know what happened when you do that? You get a slope that is not a slope of a price versus time. It's the slope of the fluctuations over the entire history of Bitcoin. That slope of the fluctuations that number is the Earth coefficient. And if it is above 0.5, it means that you're following a trend. And bigger it is, you can normalize it, but if you don't normalize it, it gives you a value of 1.6. So it's very high. And it says that basically Bitcoin is following a trend. We know that. It's another way of confirming that. But you can do it also locally, where you take like a local window and you do these calculations over and over. And the beauty of doing that is that identify regions. Like you see, look at what happens during the bubble. During the bubble, these coefficients is above 0.5. So there is this threshold. If you're above 0.5, the type of data, the type of oscillations, the type of deviations are very characteristic of something that builds up in time, right? That they are consistent, positive, let's say above 1 returns, and that makes you go up and up and up and up and up. Basically, you're trend following. And notice that is associated with the bull market, right? This is how it looks like during the bull market. And the color coding is as we come closer and closer to 1, closer we are to 1, more trend following we are. Okay, so particularly in the last period, it's a moving average, so it needs to collect data. So it's a little bit delay relatively to what happened. So it's red here, but it's basically trying to tell us that there was a big trend just before here. That is true, right? Because when we start the bull market, sure, there are ups and downs, but we almost go pretty regularly up, like in a straight line. Not in a straight line, in an exponential fashion. And notice what happened right now. We're actually below. So you see, because we added this oscillation back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So in that case, the behavior is more like mean returning. So if we are going up, very likely we're going down. And we are still in that regime. So, and again, because of a moving window, it's possible that it needs a lot of more information, to determine we are actually starting a trend here. So far, given the information we are, it looks like it's telling us that there will be oscillations. With these oscillations, here, let me make it bigger. Before I do that, I wanted to show you, like many people, I'm going to do this every single time. Many people don't realize that the power law has been working. Of course, it works from the beginning, but let's say since it was discovered, like what it's called out of sample, right? You apply to the past, but then you say, imagine we go back when I announced it, the first one. I was not famous at the time. People didn't know much. I posted on Reddit. It got a few hundred likes, and almost nobody knew about it. And then a few years later, I got the chance to get, what happened is that Andre Gic talked about. I made a new post. I show the chart up to here, my first, in this Reddit post. This was 6 years ago. And then 6 years later, I made another post. Well, 5 years, because it was like January of this year. I made another post saying, oh, look, the power law was right. That I told you 5 years ago. And the general direction of the price did follow the power law. And so this purple line shows all the data that the power law predicted so far. So I don't know if many people realize that or think about that. It's not that, we will see if the power law is true. The power law have been true for a long time so far. But okay, now let's zoom in. And you see, right, everybody is familiar about this, what happened in the last several weeks, that we're going up and down and up and down. And this is reflected by the Earth indicator telling us that we are in this regime where we are expecting this oscillation. And we are not yet over, and so to be honest, wherever Bitcoin knows, we are students of Bitcoin. Bitcoin knows what it's doing. We don't. We're trying to understand it. We are trying to predict it. But, wherever it goes. But in a way, I will prefer to continue this oscillation, not just from a selfish point of view, because the algo that I'm working also works during a bull market. But I think it's good. It's almost like a spring, right? With we are compressing and is oscillating, and then it jumps, and we can have a very good bull market. It's just like when we're going to look at liquidity, it's actually interfering a little bit on this event that I'm hoping where the liquidity model that I made need to cross the price. And then, because this is, from a logical point of view, we do need to have a liquidity to have a bull market that, because we could have a bull market when it stops because it's all FOMO and it doesn't have the liquidity to support it, and that will be worse, right? So I want the right condition to be there because of timing, like it did before. I want to have a liquidity, I want to have everything. So it's cool. I'm always happy when the price goes up, but it's very difficult to argue with it. But let's see if it continue to oscillate for the next not much until November, so another maybe month and a half or something like that. I know but many people are tired of that, I realize. But this other indicator that we have is basically the deviation from the trend, and we color coded. We also normalize it all the way from 0, where the bottoms are, to 100, where the deviation is so big that very likely the price is going to collapse. And it's normalized by basically taking in account the decay of a peak that we already observed in the history of Bitcoin. And the cool thing of doing it in that way, that now we have all the peaks, they look kind of uniform, right? They look all at the same place, and basically they are going just above that threshold of 100. I can show you the other peak here. Also, that looks uniform. You see, all look uniform. That is really cool because it allows us to almost pinpoint basically where the top is. We can also do it using the full model. Basically, one way to do that is when you see the white line going above the blue line and then coming back, and we say, okay, that place is basically the top. But this indicator is even more precise. It's basically almost pinpointing, you see, where all the tops have been. In this case, it shows us, the two tops that we had. I think this was created by COVID, by an injection. See, this was cool because there was an injection of liquidity. This was actually, even if it was a lot of FOMO and a lot of irrationality in the market, people using for gambling, doing all kinds of crazy things. All these are all the stimuli associated with the ETFs. They, they did a good thing, that was buying Bitcoin. But then, Bitcoin started to go even higher in price. That was FOMO, the top of this part, and there was not enough liquidity. The market crashed. I could have crashed it all the way. Instead, it recovered, because I think the timing is something that Bitcoin respects, and say, I need to have my top at the usual place where I'm usually having a top, and the at the top. So I'm going to stop for a second. I want to see if there are questions, and then we can go to the liquidity indicator and discuss that. All right, let me see. Hey, Joe, Crypto Girly, happy Friday, Joe. It's not cool. Finally, we have a weekend. It's great, right? I'm going to with my girlfriend to Coronado tomorrow. It is this kind of peninsula that is like a famous hotel. I lived there for all these years. It's like a hallmarker of San Diego, and I have gone there so far. So my girlfriend said, "Let's go there. We need to eat some sandwiches and go to the beach. And I need more sun instead of being in front of a computer all day." Can you please explain the time part of the full model? Why does the peak come in November? Could it be early or later? Yeah. Let me take all the question and then see if I can answer. So Saxon is, and by the way, it's nice to see you, Saxon Smith, is asking can you explain the time part of a full model? Why does the peak come in November or November-ish? Could be earlier or later. Okay, good question. How does Michael Howell data on equity affect Bitcoin clock? Yeah, we're going to see that in a moment when we look at the liquidity. There is. We haven't. I show it. We could show it on top of this, but then it's too much information. So I usually keep it as a separate indicator, and you can always combine them, put them on top of each other, but I like to see it separate because otherwise it's too much information. So let's do that in a second. I want to answer first Saxon question, and yeah, I there are these Fourier cycles, and why they are so precise time-wise, I don't know, because they could change, like when the peak don't come in May or June or whatever, they always happen at the end of a quarter for that year, for the fourth year of a cycle. If you start the cycle at the top, again, it's arbitrary. Where do you want to start it? Some people start it at the halving. I like to start it at the top. For me, it's just an arbitrary thing. But why they are so precise that I don't know, and why at the same time they don't happen in December, the end of the year, why they happen in November. I don't know. It's something that we could explore. I think, it's possibly also due, to the holidays being closed, Thanksgiving, people are more positive about the world. There are all these social aspects that one could study, because it's not that they cannot be studied. We will have to find some kind of correlation with something that we can measure, because this is the entire game that we play. We are trying to quantify everything, right? Measure, quantify. That is what I offer differently from everybody else, right? That otherwise you can listen to other analysts, they use other approaches, etc. To me, if I cannot measure it, if I cannot quantify, if I cannot calculate it, it's almost like it didn't exist. The beauty of this approach is that it's something that we do in physics all the time. I don't need to understand the entire details. Like, for example, when people built steam engines, and they found that there was a relationship between pressure, volume, and temperature, all the things that you need to know to understand a steam engine. You need to know how big it is, how much pressure you're building, because a practical thing. It was not just like a curiosity, but people, that was the eye of the time, was the driving technology of the time. You could revolutionize the world with these steam engines and all the applications. Physicists came about because, the engineers build the thing. We try to build a theory, like how does it work? What are the physical quantity involved? And they knew pressure was important. They knew the volume was important, how big where you put the heat, how will you call it that? Where you put the steam, and the temperature, how much heat there is. You need to heat up the boiler, how big the boiler is, right? How much volume the boiler has, the temperature, the pressure in the boiler, all this information. And they found a relationship, right, between pressure, temperature, and volume. This is what we are trying to do that. And they didn't understand what temperature was, what is that? We can measure it. Then, later they go deeper and they found out has to do with the motion of a particle in the steam. Faster we are going, more higher the temperature was. And I'm saying this and telling you this because I want to make you understand that it's nice to try to understand, why November, what is causing that? Is it something in the other type of cycles that are happening that are interacting with Bitcoin? Is it the holidays? Is it the reporting? Maybe there is some special reporting that happened at the last quarter. All the companies need to, there are many different things that happen that we could associate, and it will be interesting. But we observe this. We observe these irregularities. Like the physicists looking at this irregularity, they didn't need to understand. Of course, it's always better because then you can go deeper. You can maybe make a better engine if you understand the causes and all the details. But right now, we don't need to know. We just need to know how regular these peaks are. And one of the things I did, this is why we have this full model, and the model is like it looks like, because I did average all the different cycles, then calculated the uncertainties on the timing, the uncertainty on the peaks. I did all these kind of things like a real scientist will do. The only problem, we have only 3 cycles, but there are some situations like that in science too. Like we study the stars that these planets go around the stars, and it takes years sometimes to go around, and we collect the data, and we have only 3 cycles, and we are trying to predict the 4th one. Of course, with something like a planet, once you have 1 or 2 or 3 cycles, probably the 4th one is going to be very similar. You don't expect huge big changes. With human stuff like that, it's crazy that we have these very, very regular cycles, but this is why we monitor everything, right? And we don't depend 100% on the cycle, because if the timing is not correct, it's not exactly November. And yes, it could happen in October, it could happen in December. Strangely enough, I never happened after January. The top, they tend to happen before. It is also interesting. We have other tools to tell us. You see how, for example, this last indicator based on deviations was able to pick up the first bubble, right? So it doesn't depend on continuum. Now, if you are working with us, and also during these discussions, we are going to see something like this. When it happens, we are going to sit down and say, okay, we see these crazy deviations, is in a place where it looks like it's going to crash. What the liquidity is doing? We go and look at the liquidity. Oh, okay. It doesn't look like there is a lot of liquidity there, so maybe it's going to crash. So we're going to try to understand as it happens, right? Because it's much easier, of course, to look at this chart in the past and say, oh, well, yeah, sure, this what happened, it should have crashed anyway, and then there was another bubble and it happened. We don't know, right, when that is going to happen. Like right now, we're trying to figure out is a bull market started, didn't start. If we go back in the past and look, oh, sure, yeah, exactly. It's much easier to look backwards than look forward, right? But we have enough tools where we can make the best guesses that we can, and then accordingly to take actions, because that is the ultimate goal. And Sam Mendel say the bet is a tax swing, very likely. There is a cash out at the end of the year, and maybe more than one thing, right? There are all these things together that are difficult to measure, and that is what a model will do. Imagine I came to you and say, hey, look, I took taxes, I took reporting, I have 5, 10 different things. I put them together, then I say, and this is what I get. You will be very suspicious of that thing, right? It's still interesting. It's better to do it backwards, where you find the regularity first, then you go backward and say, oh, look, if I add all these things, then I kind of reproduce what we observe. That is okay. But, if you do it the other way around, it will be a little suspicious. You will probably not trust it much, right? Instead, in this case, we focus on what we see and how regular it is and the uncertainty. So, yes, one month or more or less, it's okay. It's within, but it's amazing. It's already amazing that we can tell with that level of precision. You cannot do it with anything else, just Bitcoin. So let's go to the liquidity and look at that. So the liquidity is here. And this is how it looks like. So let me summarize quickly. So first of all, let me show you in general how it looks like, right? So it looks like this. And we could add the other indicators. Like, I don't know if I even did it, but I already kind of added here the power law. I simplified. There is our support line. I kind of aligned with it's giving us a feeling that if you are above that line, the price probably is too high. We don't have an equivalent of a support. We don't have like a resistance. Would have been nice to have a resistance, but because of a peak are going down, it's not that regular. While the support, it is regular. But you can still draw a line, with kind of a certain deviation, and it's arbitrary if you go in the little bolt, if you use this, if you go to the subscription and use this at home. By the way, these are all the things I'm looking when I'm doing my liquidity model, all these organizations, so a bunch of them. When it says other countries, M2 is like many countries that I added one by one. And you can take them out and see how that interferes with the model. Like, for example, if you take all the other countries, it really changes. Now, that could be a limitation of this model because it's possible that all these countries don't have a big weight, if you give the same weight to all these things, they are going to affect equally the model. But it turns out that maybe Bitcoin is only influence, 90% comes from this. So it's something that I need to go back and improve the model because we always improve, right? Whenever I have chance, I'm trying to get a team of people helping with this. Like we are building a developer team that can help, but because, I'm doing mostly everything by myself. So one of the things I want to do that is in my to-do list is to use, and there are mathematical tools that will tell us, what, this component here is 55%. This one is 9%. So I can go back and then give weight to all these things relatively to how really they influence the price of Bitcoin. So please take this as a limitation right now, because whenever I do something, I will tell you how good it is, when it's good, and how nice and fantastic it is. And when it is as limitations, I will also let you know, because this is how we do it in science. We always trying to understand where we can improve things, where the limitations are. So right now, it's limited in that way, where it's giving equal weight to all these things. And then, you can decide how long you want to do the calculations and the averaging and et cetera, et cetera. What else I wanted to show you? And there is the power law. The power law is there. You see the power law. And there are the deviations, right? So right now it's 0.4. That is usually where we find the deviation of the power law, the support. And in this case, I did 1.8, so 80% above. By the way, this is where I'm expecting to be the peak to be. Is supposed to be 1.8. And how do we know that? Because we measure the decay of the peaks, right? We measure the decay of the peaks. The peak, strangely enough, it is like a weird thing. I don't know why, but they follow an equation. Like in that case, it's an exponential, and it looks very regular to me. I don't know why. It's FOMO. How come it's regular? Even that thing is regular. It's a mystery. But if you take it seriously, say, okay, follow this pattern. What if it continues to follow the pattern? You get something like 1.8. So this is where I'm expecting kind of like the deviation to be, for the peak to be about 80% relatively to the trend. Okay, but you can change it if you want, right? This is customizable. And so it is how it looks like if you take a kind of long term vision of the indicator. So basically, and see, when you do things like that, so how did I do it? I plotted all these measures by themselves, but plotting them by themselves is not very useful, because your eyes, even if you superimpose it, you say, oh, look, it seems to peak here. Okay, they peak, but how much the liquidity influence the price? And they make it go up by a factor of 2, a factor of 3. You don't know by superimposing. It's still useful, and other people do it. So because everybody else does it in that way, if you look at other people discussion about liquidity, is always like that. And if you don't know, if you know anybody else, let me know. I think Owl is the only one that actually kind of makes models, but I never saw him doing it relatively to Bitcoin. So it's always like they superimpose the two graphs, the graph for the price and the graph for liquidity, whatever measure we have, and they make some conclusion based on how they aligned, do they align the top? To me, it's very limiting to do that because I want to see if there is actually a mathematical relationship between these two quantities. And this is what I did here. I found the relationship is not a power law. It's much more complicated. And so that is also, and I wrote an entire article. So if you're interested, go and read my Medium article. Go in my Medium and read all my articles, many articles. But this one discusses how there is this nonlinear relationship. Is complicated. We have to be careful because by the time you look at a very complicated relationship like that, you tend to overfit it. That means whatever model you created works for the data up to this point, and then when you try to project it to the future, it doesn't. The beauty of a power law is the simplest possible model. You cannot have something like, maybe the simplest thing is just a straight line in a linear graph, but simpler than that, there is the power law. And so this is why we can extrapolate it for the future. Also because, scaling variance and all the things that you hear me say all the time. And this model doesn't have scaling variance. So, it's very difficult to project it to the future. But right now, we are not trying to project it to the future. I could try and see how, for example, the liquidity looks like. We could do that. We could try to project it to the future because we have a model, so we can include future time and see how the model responds and what it predicts. But I try to avoid that because of a limitation of this particular model. But I'm more interested to find patterns. So you see how we can recognize a particular pattern that is every time there is a bubble, there is a bubble in the cycle, we add an excess in liquidity. So basically we add the purple line. So the purple line represents the relationship between the liquidity and the price. So according to this, basically I plotted price versus this liquidity measure. You can see that is my article. I show the graph. It's a curve that goes like this. So it's very complicated because actually that is already in the log graph, and it looks like this. Like, what the heck is that? So I had to use all these terms, like what is called a Taylor expansion, a polynomial expansion, and I get this purple curve that is representing how much Bitcoin reacts when liquidity changes. And so I think it's a more useful way of looking at liquidity because it's focused on the effect of liquidity on Bitcoin, if our model is correct. And so then if you don't focus on the exact quantity, but on patterns, one pattern you see here is that every time the bull was ready to start, we had an excess of liquidity. So the purple line was above the white line. The white line is just price, the closing day, every day here, the closing price at the end of the day. Now with Bitcoin, you realize, right, we trade 24/7. So I think they use Greenwich time, basically time in London, because that is a convention of time zero. They look at the price at that particular time. That is your closing time, because it's not like a bell in New York. When the market literally closes, it's like the end of day in London. And correct me if I am wrong, but I think this is how they do it. And then you compare it with our model, and our model says, we should have had a much higher price there because we have all this liquidity available. Why don't you do something? And then Bitcoin does. So it's not really, I would not say there is a cause relationship where the liquidity causes the price to go up. It's more like, I would like to think almost like condition, like some kind of a prerequisite that makes plenty of sense, right? How can you have a bull run if there are no people with a lot of cash, institutions, etc.? Because we were an institution, even here, guys. You think that we were not, but we were, maybe like some private funds, some small banks, there were a lot of, proportionally, a lot of investors, even at that time. The only time it didn't happen, also because, the model needs data, so it could be an artifact of needing data before it actually stabilizes. But it's kind of curious that this bubble that is not associated with the halving didn't need that. Also because it was easier to manipulate the market. Or it could be, I heard somewhere, I read an article one time, they were saying that some Bitcoin analyst look at the data, and it looks almost like maybe it was a manipulation from Mt. Gox itself, and this actually reveals that it was, or at least, one more piece of evidence. But I don't know. I always consider this kind of like a anomaly, because it didn't happen during the halving, So it's interesting. But all the other one associated with the halving, we have always an excess of liquidity, and this how you see it's this green area, and then when the price goes too much high, is the other way around, where the almost like a warning sign that we don't have enough liquidity. It's all FOMO. The price is going to crash, and it does, right? And this happened over and over again for all the bubbles. So it's three cases. Again, be careful about making strong conclusions, but it does make sense logically, and it seems a pattern that has been repeated. So I'm expecting to see the same pattern. And if the same pattern happens, I would like to see this. Let me move this so you can see better. The liquidity somehow crossing the price, and if the price, and we are going in the right direction by these oscillations back and forth, because this is why I draw this line. It looked like we were going down, 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 and then the liquidity up, 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 and then there is some crossing point. Right now, with the price going up, this is why I don't know if it is a very good thing. Maybe this will pick up, and go faster, and then we'll still meet somewhere. But I'm still kind of looking for these scenarios where this oscillation will continue to be, at least for some time. We will have to be patient for another month, and then they cross, and then we have enough liquidity, and then the real bull, also we are all aligned with where we think the bull market should start from an historical point of view, and then everything aligns. But whatever Bitcoin does, we are going to look at it and try to understand it. But I will be very surprised if the liquidity is missing, and then we have a crazy bull market. Will be surprised and worried at the same time. So I'd rather have the liquidity there. So let's see if this corrects itself, or maybe let's see what happens. Maybe the liquidity starts to go faster than it's going right now. Now, about the hour cycle, I don't know how to derive his cycle, all the calculations. I've got his book. Maybe once I study, I will be able to do that. All what I cheated a little bit. So I look at the chart. So Howell is this, for the people that don't know, is this famous expert in global liquidity. He wrote books, people consult him all over the world, and actually was a guest in, we do this, we try to do it every 2 weeks. This show with all the other professionals, right? Like Fred Krueger, that is a math, Harvard PhD. We have Moni or Debt, Stephen Perrineau, his name is an Harvard physicist, astrophysicist, PhD. All people that are professionals, they know math, they understand data, they worked at data all their life, and all they come to the same conclusion. It's not, I'm telling you, oh, trust us because we are scientists. It's something that if I was from an external field and I had, 3 or 4 medical doctor telling me the same thing about, forget about vaccines and stuff like that. That is political, but something more practical, like, okay, we should do, I don't know, ulcers are due to bacteria. That is, something that we found recently, like in the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And there are more and more doctors say, yeah, we did all the tests. That is exactly what happened. I will start to think, well, maybe we have a point. I will try to read the papers. If I had ulcers and I wanted to understand it better, I will try to do my homework. But it will make me feel good that there are a lot of professionals converging on some agreement. This is a good thing. So we have this show every 2 weeks, and we had Owl coming and discussing his understanding about liquidity. Gave us a lot of so if you didn't have a chance, look at. I will put like links in the comments when you look at the video. So some of the other things that we discuss, like my article on liquidity, so you can go and read it if you're interested. Maybe a link about about the interview that we had with him. But I kind of cheated a little bit. I found his chart online with this. He has this, kind of looks like this. And by the way, what I'm showing here are deviations. So the blue line is the deviation of the purple line from the power law. This is what you're seeing. So I'm looking at the deviation of a model, of a liquidity model relatively to the power law. So you see these, kind of follow the bubble, like anticipate. So it's kind of interesting, right? We can look at how it looks. It's almost like he leads the bubble, right? Leads the bubble. And then the bubble happen later relatively to this. And the yellow one is the power law, the price relatively to the power law, how that looks like. So the deviation of the price relatively to the power law. And this is the power of the price relative to the liquidity model, what you're seeing here, the white with the shaded area. So basically these, but horizontal, because I'm taking off the general trend, basically. And he has something like this, where he has, these complicated shapes, going up and down, they represent his cycle. And he does it over like many, many years, going back decades. And then he has this sine wave that is supposed to be the dominant oscillation. Because when you look at something like this, you can use these tools from science. One of them is called Fourier transform. And what I like about Howell, that he does use some of this scientific approach and terminology that is great. That I didn't see that with so many financial analysts. And so I use this Fourier transform. Fourier transform will create all these peaks. Will produce a graph where you have a frequency, right, of whatever your phenomena you're studying. And if there is no any oscillations or any real periodicity, it will be flat. It will look like, we call it white noise. A white noise because all the different colors are represented equally. And so if you're thinking about frequency as kind of an analogy with colors, right, because the colors are different frequency of light, when you have all the colors represented equally, you have white noise. And so if it is in a graph like that, where you are representing the different contributions of the different frequencies in the data, it will look flat. It will look flat, with a lot of little variations because it's still noise, but in general flat. But if there is a very strong oscillations, like in Bitcoin, we have these 4 years oscillation that are very strong. Bigger they are, more persistent, more consistent they are, stronger the signal will look like a peak. Or maybe, like, again, that ideal situation looks more like kind of a upside down V, peaking in a certain place, and that peak will be the frequency, right? And then if you want to know the period, because it's easier to think in terms of periods, right? Is it months, years, or whatever? You take the inverse of that, right? Because the period is the inverse of the frequency. So this is what he did. And in his graph, he had this very strong dominant, and the strongest peak you will call it the dominant frequency. And then you have other ones. Many times the other ones are multiple of they are called harmonics. It's the main dominant frequency, then the harmonics, and sometimes other frequency, like maybe there is a big cycle and then there is a little cycle that is faster or slower. It's really cool. I did some of that with Bitcoin, but it's something that I need to explore more, because maybe there are smaller cycle in Bitcoin that we didn't identify yet, besides the Fouriers. But he did it with this liquidity measure, and he got this sine wave, right? Because then when you go back to time, that little peak becomes a sine wave with a given periodicity. And the periodicity of this thing is 65 months. That is different from Bitcoin periodicity of 48 months. So how do they interact together? How they play together? It's something that we need to explore and understand better. But I kind of cheated. I look at this graph. I saw where, because I have two things important with the sine wave, I will be the period. So how long does it take to go through a full cycle, right? That will be your period. In this case, he says it's 65 months. So I made my sine wave say, make it 65 months, because in TradingView, you can do whatever you want, right? You can tell, draw me a 65. Now, the peak here is arbitrary, right? Because I don't know how big the peak is. Just made it big where you can see it and compare it with everything else. But the other thing you need to know, besides the period, it's the phase, right? Is it peaking here? Is it peak? That is what we mean for phase. Where is it peaking? Where is the trough? Where is the peak? And I look at this graph online and I try to kind of guess it a little bit. And it seemed it was like peaking kind of in February 20. And then he had a trough in November 22. But it's kind of interesting because here where we are at the bottom of the coin, is it a coincidence? I don't know. It's interesting. And now you see what happens. This recycle. I need to extend it to the future because I know the equation. I did it here by hand. It's bad. I need to improve it and extend it automatically. One of the problems with TradingView, you cannot project more than 500 days ahead. But we can. I think it's good enough to get us at the peak, because the peak should be around October of 25. That is close to where we are expecting the peak for the cycle to be, the Bitcoin cycle. So it's actually the first time in the entire history of Bitcoin, because I look at other places where was there another alignment, etc. Not here, kind of, but not quite. But it's the first time where they will be aligned, kind of, right, within 1 or 2 months uncertainty. And maybe, like I was talking with Howell, I explained that, say, well, I don't exclude that the cycle gets stretched a little bit, in one direction, other is not perfect. It's like a simplification of the general pattern. So it could be that it does align perfectly with November, or maybe the Bitcoin cycle will peak in October, because it's going to be a lot of drive due to this hour cycle. So we will see. We will have to see. And then we can kind of conclude, but let me see. I can show you this one. This one, it shows basically the volatility. And the volatility is basically the standard deviation of the returns. Returns means price today over price yesterday, right? So this is a ratio. If you are above 1, it was a good day. Bitcoin went up. If it is below 1, we went down. And here the white curve is 150 days average of these returns. The blue line is what the power law says the return should be. And you can see if you go back in time, the average returns, the real average returns are following the predicted path of the power law. Of course, the power law is simplified because it's just a line, but that line, it's also a statistical property. So it's much more than a pretty line in a graph. It's a deep statistical property. We did it like 10 different ways to show that that is the case. And this is one of the demonstrations with actually the returns, Because the returns don't know much about the path, right? It's price today divided price yesterday. In fact, many times you can use the return to the trend data, but they do follow a trend. Because people confuse, they talk about two diminishing returns. They talk about diminishing returns of the peaks, that is there. And then we talk about, I don't know if we talk about all this what we mean, but there is another diminishing return that is even more essential. It is the diminishing returns, you can call it annual diminishing return, daily diminishing return. That is one-to-one with the power law. The power law implies these diminishing returns. But as I try to explain many times, it's actually a feature. It's not a bug. It's one of these things that allows us to continue to grow and have this system becoming bigger and bigger without collapsing. Because if we didn't have these diminishing returns, the system will collapse. It will be exponential and then collapse. Many people don't realize that, but people like me that spend this entire life studying these things, we know that. This is why you should read this book called Scale by Jeffrey West, where they discuss these kind of things. But you see how these are basically 150 days return. We could calculate yearly returns, but these are averaged over, so daily returns average over a window of 150. And you can see they follow the general power law trend. And right now, because we were kind of in a losing strike, we are going down, 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 less and less returns. We were below what the power law average returns should be for a while, because basically we are in a downtrend, and now we are recovering, right? But we are still not above on a daily basis. When you average it over all the 150 days, we are not yet above the daily return due to the power law. I draw two different lines. So this red and green above and below, there's one standard deviation means because these gray lines are the instantaneous, like the daily returns themselves, not averaged. And they look like very noisy, right? Very, very noisy, up and down, up and down. So if you have a day where we went above a red line, it means it was a particularly good day. If it is below, we had a relatively big loss. But right now I want to focus on these two lines. Again, maybe I need to make them bigger and also extend them in the future. But what they represent is what should be the average gain, average return, right? Compounded every single day if we go along this path, right? So if we go and we achieve $200,000, we are supposed to do about 1 point, like the return should be something like 1.00, so 203. That means, that means 0.3% a day. So we should make 0.33% a day in average every day in this area with a marked here with these two vertical lines. That is the year that it will take to go up to the top. So we take 1 year, we reach the top there. For 1 year, this white line needs to be, it can go a little bit below sometime, and then it needs to recover and go up. But in average, that line will need to be close to this green line, or maybe above that green line. If we do that, then we are on the path of making 200,000. If we go above here, then we are going to 500,000. So this measure is actually pretty good, because as we go towards the bull market, we could be looking, we can monitor the average of this gain. We can look at 100 days, 50 days, 150 days, and see, okay, are we compounding every day enough where we are going to reach the top? Because it's going to be relatively consistent. Remember, the Hearst indicator says we are on trend following. Once we start on the bull run, it will be relatively consistent. Yeah, there will be some local peak, local drawdowns, but in general, it should be very consistent. And so it's a way of monitoring and even kind of predicting ahead of time where we are going. Are we on the path of 200? Are we on the path of 300? A million? A million will be there. Another way, the other day was I make a video, maybe we can conclude here, of how crazy some of these alternative scenarios that some people give, because it's fun. There is a lot of enthusiasm. Listen, I don't have a problem for a million Bitcoin. It's not going to invalidate the power law, because remember, the power law says that, yeah, we'll go to a million, then we go down 80% and we go back to the trend line, whatever that peak is. That is where we are going to test the power law. Once we come back, if we don't do that, then this is where the power law will make it or break it. The size of a peak, many people confuse that because they didn't study enough or they didn't spend enough time to understand. It's very coherent. It's a very coherent, very consistent picture. We are saying the bubble don't exist. We see this irregularity. Does it have to do with the power law? Maybe. Right now, we don't know if it has anything to do with the power law. It's something else. Maybe it's another phenomenon, the fact that the bubbles, peaks go down in a very precise manner. But given that is there, we are using it to make a guess of where the peak is, instead of just doing it by hand waving. That is what 99.9 of the other people do it. We say, look, there is this pattern. It seems to be very precise. If it continues to go, then this is where we are expecting the top to be. That is a very consistent picture. But given we have only 4 of these peaks, it's possible that it's an illusion, this particular path. That when it follow for 4 data points, because actually you can include, in that case, you can include the first bubble, and it doesn't work for the 5th one. Okay, that doesn't destroy at all, that doesn't even touch the power law at all. It just tells you that this apparent pattern of the peaks is not going to be followed. We will test it here. You see, I draw this line saying, okay, we are expecting to go down there. It is supposed to be 70,000 when we go there. If we don't go close to the support line and maybe continue to go like this or do some other crazy things, or maybe we go much lower than that, all these will be violation of the power law. But the peak itself, no. So do you think I want $1 million peak? Of course I want it. But then you have to be realistic, because I'm particular because I'm trying to do this thing where I'm selling some of my coins. And by the way, people will tell you we will sell too early. No, because if you do it in this approach that we are suggesting, like just a percentage, like 10, 20, 30, even 50, you still have a bunch of coins. And if it goes even higher, see, it's all people talking bad about our understanding of Bitcoin when it's the most complete and most scientific, because we have overdo it on purpose. I'm talking about, for example, as Plan B saying stupid things about this approach, like you say that we will sell in February. Nobody ever said. Did you ever hear me saying sell in February? Where does it even take that? And we are not telling you to sell everything. So if it goes to 200,000 or close, first of all, we will be able to tell by the other indicators, again, something that we have no clue. We have a ability to do that, because if we go towards $1 million, we will see it. That return indicator will give us all kind of signal that we are going that direction. Absolutely. We will be able to tell months ahead that we are going in that direction, first of all. Second, if you sell 50, you still have the other 50. And by the time it goes to $1 million, you can rebalance the portfolio and bring it back to 50-50 in terms of USDT and BTC and still make a ton of money. But you're also prepared for the market going down. So our approach is 100 times better than many other people. And in particular, unless they spend the time, they look at these videos, they look at all the materials that we are producing, they have no clue. Let them have no clue. It's okay. When we will be here and everybody will panic and they want to sell their Bitcoin, because the same people that say they don't want to sell it here, they will sell it here. Many do. Some don't, because they are diamond ends, but the data shows that many do. They talk in one way and they do another, because by the time he's here, they panic. Maybe something happens here with something bad, and it's not something bad. It's all about events and cycles. But something bad happens, and they say, "Oh, because of this, like last time FTX, the price will go down to 5,000." And they will get scared, and because they're not aware, we will be able to buy cheap Bitcoin and multiply our Bitcoin. And here there will be people that are willing to buy our Bitcoin when it's going to 200 or 500. We will sell some of our Bitcoins and multiply and continue to benefit for going up, while they will buy a 500,000 when the market crashes. So I don't know which one is better. You judge. You will be the judge. But I wanted to show you something ridiculous. If I can play with these, but already showing another video. I'm going to reduce these so you can actually see it better. In fact, I could even close the panel. Let me do this. So it doesn't look, these are 500 and this is a million, right? It doesn't look like crazy when you go there. When you look at it in the log chart. But if I go here and then take off the log, yeah, so this is linear now, right? Look how crazy it is. We are here. We need to go there. So first of all, there, even that seems, wow, are we really going there? Is that 200,000? Look at where 500,000 is. It's crazy. It's completely crazy. Okay, do you think the price really has a big chance to go over there, by like this, in this short amount of time? I think it's extremely unlikely. Okay, it could happen. Maybe we go 300, 400, 500. Even visually, you see how absurd this statement is, and irresponsible, because he will, people like Plan B will continue to say these crazy things, and then people buy at the top, and it's okay because eventually they can make their money, etc. But it will take years before they go in positive. And many people will leave because they think we scam them. So let's not to try to scam anybody, And 1 million over there, right? Look how crazy it is. How can we go there, Maybe like in the beginning, the first bubbles, the first bubble were possible. Look at also the liquidity. Think about the liquidity that will be necessary to support this. It's absurd. We cannot go there, It's very, very unlikely unless something dramatic happened, to the world or whatever, So let's be realistic. Let's love Bitcoin. Let's try to understand it. Let's play with reality, because in the end, this is how you make money. You don't make money with fairy tales. You make money with, unless you are the one telling the fairy tales, and then maybe you take advantage of people by doing that. You make money, normal people, honest people make money by understanding reality as it is, and then studying it, working hard, making difficult decisions sometimes, but, informed decision with knowledge and science and reality, math. So this is what we are trying to do here. I know that it took us, 1 hour and a half. So these are not 10 minutes, little, videos that try to give you like buzzwords and fake information. We are trying to go deep, so sorry that it took all this time, but hopefully it was a useful meeting. I'm going to look at some of your questions, and then we can meet next Friday. I'm trying to have this regularly every Friday, so come by if you like what the content of this presentation, and maybe next time, before we start, you can take questions about the power law in general, and we can go deeper in certain things, whatever you like, but it will be mostly focused on understanding the market. All right, let me take some of the questions. To stay a bit above the power law line because of ETFs. So in theory, right, if a theory was perfect and everything follow the textbook, if you look like almost glued to the support line, and then in November go up. And if you go and look at the first cycle, was exactly like that. I can show you. It follow almost like textbook material. and then the second cycle kind of my computer is responding slowly for some reason. See how in the first cycle it was almost textbook, right? We did exactly that. And then in fact, actually, well, because these sine waves, I need to improve these sine waves. I discovered recently that is really more like an exponential growth. So I can actually reproduce this V-shaped look of a bubbles. The first attempt was kind of to use like a sine wave. This is why it doesn't perfectly fit, but I will do that as an improvement of model. I can actually make these look like more like the real shape of the bubbles. But you kind of started there, right? Again, at the right time, more or less at the end of the year, with hour 9, right? This is not hour 9, kind of started there, right? And then it went up. And same thing here. Here we had a similar situation where there was some exciting thing that pushed the price up. People were very optimistic, maybe a liquidity event. We can go back and being, like kind of Bitcoin archaeologist, and trying to understand the past, because the past helps us to understand the future. So there is nothing wrong in going back and trying to understand. Is like, for example, I ask that all the time. Anybody remembers anything happening around April 19 that was kind of bullish, that could have pushed the price up? We can look it up. I don't know, right? There was no, it doesn't come to my mind a very specific event, but maybe there was. Now, you have to understand also, when I do my Monte Carlo simulation, where basically I create alternative history of Bitcoin based on the stats, because this is one of the things that we can do as mathematicians, can run this and all the stats and how fast the bubbles were going and all the standard deviations of the returns. And then based on that, I can say to the computer, hey, generate random numbers and create an alternative history, like if you were an alternative path, an alternative universe. And you can see it always follows the power law. It always has the bubble at the right place, but there is some fuzziness there, right? And you can see things like that, like by just chance, right? It's the equivalent of tossing a coin. And imagine in a universe somewhere there is a Giovanni, and he does that experiment, and he gets 12 heads, one after another. Is that impossible? No, but you can even calculate how probable it is. It's very unlikely. You will have to have millions of universes, but if you have enough, in one of them there will be that event. And I don't know how unlikely this is. We can look at some of the Monte Carlo simulation, but this was due by chance alone. Like a bunch of things that happened in the sequence. There was nothing in particular, and made it happen. Now it's probably unlikely because it's such big deviations, but some of the other ones, like when you think, oh, why did this spike here? Chance. Didn't have to be a particular event. But something like this, like a big deviation. But we can look it up when I have chance. If any of you want to look it up, look at what did it happen there, because it will be interesting, right? Because we can learn stuff. I know what happened here. Any guess what happened here? Anybody wants to guess in the chat what happened here? That is COVID. See how the price corrected itself, and where did it go? To the support line. How crazy this is. It's really interesting, right? That there are all these patterns that seem to confirm that, we are into something. We have a good way of understanding how Bitcoin behaves. Right? The price was overvalued. We can look at the liquidity. I bet there was not enough liquidity there too, and then price corrected itself. And, COVID maybe corrected even bigger. So maybe if COVID didn't happen, maybe it continued to fluctuate like that, and stay below the power law, and then it went up, right? At the right time. So I think we have a scenario like this without the COVID. So basically, and in this case, we don't know what made the market go up. We know what made the market up, because I kind of refrain to create narratives because I'm all focused on data. But it's so evident, it's so strong of an event, right? And it happened at the right time. Maybe there are ways we could look at the flow. Again, it's one in my to-do list. We look at the flow of ETF and see if it is strongly correlated with this going up like that. But I bet it's ETF. The ETF pushed the market. There was an injection of cash in the system. By the way, the global liquidity, no, because you can see that there was no global liquidity pushing up. In fact, there was a divergence. It created a problem with between price and global liquidity. And then also probably a lot of FOMO by retailer. They push the price up. Notice what happened. They stopped where? At the power law, at the general trend power law. And then, it's almost like say, okay, I should not be there, and it corrects itself. Now, are we going to crash all the way to the support like with COVID? Only if there is a COVID-like event, and it's too late in the cycle, to have such a big correction. We are ready for the bull market, so it's not going to be. Now, it's possible that we do what we did there, the last several weeks, where we have these oscillations back and forth, and in fact, kind of going down generally, but we will have to see, this is what I will say so far. It seems a very consistent description. Flow, if it doesn't count for ETF liquidity. Yeah, the liquidity for the ETF was local, and it didn't affect, it did affect the price locally, and then the price corrected. Because if you think that the ETF can change the overall pattern of the power law, they don't, because I actually calculated which kind of flow we need to continue on the power law trend. I did that calculation. I need maybe to write an article. I have so much stuff that I'm doing almost every day that if I had to write a single article and put it together and trying to organize all this work, I will not even sleep. There is so much work to do. But I did calculate what is required, like I did kind of almost like a little simulation of what is required from here moving on every day as an inflow to actually just stay on the power law. And that is, and consider, so that means also not having the bubbles, etc. Just to continue the regular path. Right now, we need about $200 million dollars per day, including Saturday, Sunday, holidays that usually we don't have an inflow because the inflow happens only on trading day. That are, just to give you an idea, 252. I can redo the calculation just using trading day. There are 252 trading days relatively to 365 days in the year, and Bitcoin is traded 365 days. The ETFs are traded 252. So you're already kind of almost losing 100 days. And imagine we are trading every single day, and we bring in 200 million. That is what is required now to stay on the power law. And if you take the average of the ETFs, we don't get that. And that number is not going to stay there. It's going to climb more and more. By 10 years from now, it's going to be like $1.5 billion or something like that every single day. So the ETFs is just one of the things we need to continue on the power law, because the retailers, you say, well, but then we have retailers, we have everybody sell. We are not going to really make up for, we are not going to be as big as ETFs, right? So ETFs is just a component. You have everything else, but it's not a component that is going to break the power law per se in terms of the inflows. But I do need to sit down and look at, maybe even make a model of the ETF relative to Bitcoin, show how the price changes as the ETF inflow changes. I didn't do that yet, but I did a rough calculation initially to show, it's not that kind of event that will break the power law. Yeah, so many people don't understand scaling variance. I really, really suggest you, and again, I will put it in the comments in the video, but if you had to read a single book to understand Bitcoin, of course, read the Bitcoin standard because it's more specific to Bitcoin, etc. But beside that, like the second reading, and if you already read the Bitcoin standard, then read Scale. You want to read Scale by Jeffrey West. And the book is all about, it doesn't talk about Bitcoin. I'm going to do that. I'm going to write a book where I'm using the same idea. Of course, I will quote his book, etc. It's called The Physics of Bitcoin, that book, and that I'm writing. But, this book already introduces you to this idea of power laws everywhere, because this idea of scale is like one-to-one with power laws. It's like the two aspects of the same coin. It's another way, or is the most important property of power law. It's another way of thinking about power laws. So they are, if you say power law, you say scaling variance. And it's so important to understand everything that happens to Bitcoin, even things like the ETFs influence, or where we are going, when we are going to reach a state adoption, all these things. And I could be wrong, but right now seems to work, and it gives like a very, very deep understanding. It goes beyond being just a nice model. It's a philosophy of Bitcoin. And so I really suggest you to read this book, read some of my articles where I wrote this article that is called Bitcoin is Inherently Predictable. I think that is a good place also to understand. I'm going to give you a link for that, to understand how to think about Bitcoin using scaling variance, in particular things like what is the impact of the ETF? Are we going to reach gold in terms of of market cap? When that is going to happen? When we are reaching 1 million? What different events, good events and bad events, can influence the price of Bitcoin? So it gives you like a framework. Now, you don't have to accept it, but at least consider it, right? Consider it, process it, try to see if it makes sense to you. But it's really the most important concept. But also in general, to understand life, I don't have it here with me, but I was reading it. It's near the bed. But I did recently a video where, by the way, on Thursday I will always have a video that talks about the book, and I'm reading the book, and it's a live event, so you are invited to that event. I think I'm going to do it around 4 PST every Thursday, and you can join me and ask questions about the book. Right now we are on chapter 3, so you can buy the book and catch up and then join us. And you don't have to buy the book; you can just join. But it's really cool. It's a different way of understanding Bitcoin, but also the world, because you can understand many things around you, history. Like the other day I was reading an article that say the time in between the wars, it's a power law. the number of casualty in a war is a power law. So many things around us are power laws. So I don't know why they don't teach it in school and make it like a common concept. But learn new things. That is really amazing. It's one of the good things about being a Bitcoiner. You learn new concepts, new ideas, and so on. So one thing that we need to understand is how, for example, the 65-month cycle interacts with the Fourier cycles, and physics is very good for that because it's one of the things that we study all the time. Different phenomena have different oscillations, they interact with each other, what happens. Usually there is like a transfer of energy between the two systems, and in this case it's transfer of money, so there are a lot of interesting analogies. So it's all about finding analogies, but they are meaningful analogies because then you can use the same math. When this guy was criticizing the power law, saying, it's not a physical system. He doesn't know what he's talking about because we have entire branch of physics studying sociological phenomena, studying economical phenomena. Physics has done that for a long time. There is no line say, hey, here the physics ends, here this starts. Physics can study everything if you find the right analogy, the right components. And sometimes the analogies breaks, right? So you have to understand also where you can extend your analogy and where it doesn't work. That is also part of the work to understand the difference. But many times when you say a wave, a gravitational wave, that is what I studied when I was a grad student, and a wave in the ocean and the sound waves, they are all waves. And these are waves. These cycles are also waves. So you can study, you can talk about periods, you can talk about the amplitude of the wave, you use the same language and the same math. When I wrote this, how do you think I draw this model? I used a wave equation, same thing. Exactly. So you can apply this idea from physics to finance and it works. And somebody's asking, what is your 25 price prediction? Well, you'll see it in front of you, right? I say that the peak is going to be 200,000. It's there in the graph. And then we go down from there all the way to 70,000. So it will take 1 year to go down, up, and we reach 200,000. 1 year to go down, 70,000. And Kaspa, people ask me this question about Kaspa all the time. I was the one funding. There is a power law there, different things. And so this also answers the question about ETH. It doesn't have a power law. We kind of follow Bitcoin, so it kind of a little bit look like, but when you calculate how good of a power law is, it's very bad. It's not good stats, and you can exclude that it really follows this beautiful power law we see in Bitcoin. With Kaspa, you do see a power law. One of the important requirements to claim that you are dealing with power law is that you have many orders of magnitude. With Bitcoin, we have 8 orders of magnitude. With Kaspa, we don't. We think it's only 2, maximum 3. And so you have to take it with a grain of salt. It's very regular. It kind of looks like a power law, but we are not sure yet. And in fact, it looks like it's going away from a power law. I was discussing this with one of my, one of the people in the Discord channel. And by the way, if you are interested to join us in Discord, we have this community right now. It's us, almost 700 people or so on. And you also get the indicators. So you get all these indicators. And by the way, it's my video, so I can promote myself. We have basically this Patreon program, and I just put a link if you're interested, and you can look at what we do. But basically, everybody gets for $5. Everybody gets the main indicator on the chart, and then once you get in the Discord, you also get an invite for the Discord. People are sharing code, Pine script code, modification of the algorithms. help each other. We have all these meetings. Everything is free. There is no, oh, you are this level. Everybody gets access to everything. I'm posting stuff on Patreon. Like today, we were looking at a chart on Python that makes the power law, and you can download the data directly, free for the members. So every month we have perks. It's basically like a relationship where you support my work and I give you some perks, to be a support. There is no selling anything. We are not selling. There is no $1,000 course that people do to scam people. It's you are supporting. I decided to stop doing everything else that I was doing before, and I'm going to do this full time as a teacher, as a scientist that studies Bitcoin. And so you are helping me and supporting me. And if you like, if you find value, you pay me $5. If you don't, you don't. It's a very nice relationship. It's like same thing with a independent journalist. And it actually is amazing that we have these tools where we can support people that decide to get out of the system and they work for the people. I'm working for you. You and I think it's amazing. And same time, it's a kind of independent even from the people, because it's only support. It's not that you're telling me do this, do that. If you like what I do, you support me. Otherwise, not. And to be transparent, all the indicators though are not $5, are $20, because right now we have 8 indicators. I didn't show you the MicroStrategy. We can do it next Friday. But also the latest one we developed is MicroStrategy. And the deal I have with the supporters is, if you get in the higher level, that is this, we call it insider, that is $20, then I promise them that no matter how many indicators I'm going to have, and they want to develop almost like once a month. Don't use it against me, because it depends on how busy I am, but that is the target, about once a month, to make a new indicator. And it could be next time we have the miners, maybe we have our on-chain, like addresses, the hash rate, every month we add one more. And my promise was, I'm not going to increase the price. Even if we have like 30 indicators, we will be always for free. I mean, not for free, but for same price. And eventually we want also to have hubs that are automating some of these things. Like, if you want to do DCA, like for example, we didn't go in the details, but you could use this, kind of risk measure from 0 to 100 and decide, look, I'm going to balance my portfolio on the basis of the value of this indicator. Right now, we are around 50, for example, right? So right now we are 50 with this indicator at the bottom. You could say, hey, let me have 50 cash, 50 Bitcoin. So when you go and you do your DCA, let's say every month you buy $100, buy $100, buy $100. It is amazing. Everybody should do that. Even if you are a poor student, put aside $10, okay? Now, if you want to follow this approach, you follow the index and you say, okay, it tells me 50. So you know what? I'm going to put $50 aside in USDT, and I'm going to buy $50 in Bitcoin. And as it goes up, you start to put aside more and more USDT. And then when the price collapses and it goes back to the lower values, you buy more. So, these are kind of, we call it weighted DCA. You can try, and it doesn't have to be like I described. It could be that maybe you want to go above 70 before you do this, so 65 or whatever. You can make your own. And in the Discord channel, people are experimenting. They are doing back testing. They say, okay, I tried this combination and this is what I got. Everybody's helping each other. It's really cool. And so if you join us, you're part of our community, and then you get all these benefits, all these perks, and so on. So I put the link. Just check it. There are 7 days free, so you can just check and see how it looks like, and then you can make a decision if you want to continue to support this project. Okay, I think we covered a lot of stuff. I answered a bunch of questions. I really thank you so much, to be part of this experience, spending Friday night with me. You could have done so many other things. Hopefully this was useful. It was not too boring. It's my style, and I know I take forever, but it's different thing, right? It's like Lex Friedman having long form interview versus short interviews. Hopefully you get some value out of this. Thank you so much, guys. I see you soon. We'll do this every Friday, so see you soon next Friday. Bye, guys.